Meet Jonathan Blake, a self-made millionaire with a reputation for his sharp mind and an appetite for adventure. On a chilly evening, Jonathan decides to dine at an exclusive restaurant in the heart of the city. His work week has been exhausting, and he's looking forward to an indulgent meal and some quiet reflection. But as he steps out of his sleek black car, something unusual catches his eye. A young girl, bundled in a worn coat, sitting on the curb just outside the restaurant. She seems to be about 12 years old, her wide eyes fixed on him. As Jonathan brushes past her, she suddenly tugs on his sleeve and says, "Sir, don't eat your meal tonight, please." Her voice is firm, almost urgent. What would you do if a stranger made such a bizarre plea? Jonathan hesitates, confused by her odd warning, before shaking it off and walking inside. But little does he know, this seemingly random moment is about to change everything. The restaurant is lavish, filled with glittering chandeliers and polished silverware. The hum of conversations and the clink of glasses create an atmosphere of sophistication. Jonathan takes his usual table by the window, overlooking the busy street. The girl's strange words echo in his mind, but he quickly dismisses them as the ramblings of a child looking for attention. The waiter approaches with the menu, and Jonathan orders the chef's special, a dish the restaurant is famous for. As he waits for his meal, Jonathan checks his phone, scrolling through emails and texts. Outside, the girl is still sitting on the curb, her eyes never leaving the restaurant. What could she have meant by her warning? Was she playing a prank? Or could there be something more sinister at play? Jonathan's curiosity lingers, but his hunger overrides his doubt. He waves it off. What harm could a meal possibly bring? The meal arrives in a grand flourish, a steaming plate of truffle pasta, garnished with edible gold flakes. Jonathan marvels at the artistry, the rich aroma whetting his appetite. He picks up his fork, ready to dive in, when a sudden flash of movement catches his attention. It's the girl. She's pressed her face against the glass, staring directly at him. Her eyes are pleading, almost desperate. Jonathan's stomach churns with unease. The other diners notice her too, exchanging murmurs of disapproval. The restaurant manager strides over, shooing her away with a stern expression. She vanishes into the shadows, but not before mouthing two unmistakable words. Don't eat. Have you ever had an inexplicable feeling that something wasn't right, even when everything seemed perfectly normal? Jonathan sets his fork down, his appetite fading. Could there be a reason for her strange behavior, or was it just a coincidence? The unease sticks with Jonathan as he stares at his untouched plate. He pushes the pasta aside and calls the waiter over, asking for the check without eating a bite. The waiter looks puzzled but complies. Jonathan can't shake the feeling that something is off. As he leaves the restaurant, he glances around, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Who was she? And why did she seem so intent on stopping him from eating? Jonathan decides to take a detour on his way home, driving through the quieter streets in search of answers. The city lights blur past as he replays the scene in his mind. Could a street girl possibly know something about his meal that he didn't? Or was it all a strange coincidence? Sometimes the smallest moments can set off a chain of events you'd never expect. As Jonathan rounds the corner, his headlights catch a familiar figure huddled on the steps of a crumbling brick building. The girl is there, knees drawn to her chest, her thin arms clutching herself against the biting cold. The faint glow of a nearby street lamp illuminates her face. Young, yet hardened by a life clearly fraught with struggle. Jonathan's heart tightens at the sight, and without hesitation, he pulls his sleek car to a stop and steps out. His polished shoes crunch against the gravel as he approaches cautiously, his breath visible in the frosty air. "Hey," he calls out gently, keeping his tone soft to avoid alarming her. She lifts her head sharply, her wide eyes filled with surprise that quickly shift to guarded resolve. Her gaze locks on him, unwavering but cautious, as though preparing to defend herself from whatever might come next. "Why did you warn me about the meal?" Jonathan asks, his voice calm but laced with urgency. He notices her hesitance as she looks down, tracing invisible patterns on the concrete with her finger before slowly meeting his eyes again. Her voice, when she finally speaks, is barely above a whisper but carries a weight that stops him in his tracks. "Because they were going to poison you," she says, her tone flat but firm, as though the truth were as simple as the rising sun. Jonathan feels the words slam into him, his breath catching. Poison? His logical mind wants to dismiss it as nonsense, but something about her steady conviction roots him to the spot. Her face is a mixture of vulnerability and determination. She doesn't waver, not for a second. He studies her, searching for any hint of deceit, but all he sees is a girl who looks worn down by life yet unshakably resolute. His mind races. Could this really be true? Or was this some kind of ploy? How would she even know, he wonders, the conflict playing across his face. The air feels heavier now, charged with an unspoken tension. He realizes he's standing in the middle of a quiet street, the hum of his car the only sound, and yet it feels as though the entire world has gone silent, holding its breath for what might come next. "What do you mean?" he presses, his voice sharper now, though not unkind. The girl shifts uncomfortably, her gaze flickering to the ground as though she's weighing whether to say more. Jonathan can feel the cold creeping through his coat, but his focus remains entirely on her, the world around them fading into a blur of shadows and uncertainty. What would you do in his position? Would you trust her words, risk your safety, or walk away from what might just be the most important conversation of your life? For Jonathan, the moment feels like a crossroads, and his heart pounds with the knowledge that whatever he chooses will change everything. Jonathan's skepticism is evident, but the girl doesn't waver. "I saw them," she says, her voice low but steady. "The chef and another man, they were talking in the alley behind the restaurant. I heard them say your name and something about making sure you wouldn't walk out alive." Jonathan's pulse quickens. It sounds like the plot of a thriller movie, yet her sincerity is impossible to ignore. "Why would anyone want to harm me?" he asks, his mind racing. The girl shrugs, her small shoulders tense. "I don't know, but I heard them, and I couldn't just do nothing." Jonathan stares at her, torn between disbelief and a growing sense of dread. Could someone really be plotting against him? And if so, why? The night feels colder, the shadows deeper. What if the girl is right? What if her warning just saved his life? Taking a deep breath, Jonathan decides to investigate further. He asks the girl to wait in the car while he makes a phone call. He dials his assistant, asking her to dig into the restaurant staff and any recent changes. The girl watches him from the passenger seat, her eyes wide with curiosity and caution. "You don't believe me, do you?" she says softly. Jonathan glances at her, his expression unreadable. "I believe something's not adding up," he replies, "but I need more than just words." The girl looks hurt, but nods. She understands his doubt. It's not every day someone takes a street girl's word over a high-end establishment. But deep down, Jonathan feels a spark of gratitude. If not for her, he might have eaten the meal without a second thought. Could her warning be the first clue in uncovering something far bigger? Hours pass as Jonathan and the girl wait for answers. His assistant finally calls back with unsettling news. The restaurant's head chef was recently hired, and his background raises red flags. He's been associated with shady dealings and has a history of abruptly leaving jobs under mysterious circumstances. Jonathan's stomach tightens. The girl's story suddenly feels less far-fetched. "What's your name?" he asks her, realizing he hadn't even thought to ask before. "Maya," she says quietly. For the first time, Jonathan smiles. "Well, Maya, it looks like you might have just saved my life." The girl's eyes widen with a mix of relief and pride. Have you ever felt validated after taking a risk to help someone, even when they doubted you at first? Jonathan begins to realize that her courage might have prevented something catastrophic, but who could be behind this plot, and why? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Jonathan decides to confront the restaurant staff. He drives back to the restaurant, Maya by his side, her small figure barely visible in his oversized coat. The manager greets him with a polite smile, clearly confused by his return. "I need to speak to the chef," Jonathan says, his tone leaving no room for argument. The chef is summoned, his face calm but guarded. Jonathan stares him down, searching for any sign of guilt. "Was there anything unusual about my meal tonight?" he asks, his voice sharp. The chef falters, his eyes darting nervously. Jonathan presses further and the manager grows visibly uncomfortable. Could the cracks in their facade be revealing the truth? The tension in the room is palpable. Have you ever felt like you were moments away from uncovering something big? As the confrontation intensifies, the chef finally snaps under pressure. "I don't know what you're talking about," he blurts out, but his voice is shaky. Jonathan notices the manager exchanging a quick, panicked glance with the chef. It's enough to confirm his suspicions. "I'll be involving the authorities," Jonathan says coldly, turning to leave. Outside, Jonathan calls the police, explaining everything. Maya stands beside him, her earlier bravery now mingled with fear. "Did I do the right thing?" she asks quietly. Jonathan crouches to meet her eyes. "You did more than the right thing, Maya. You might have saved my life. Have you ever stepped into a moment bigger than yourself, wondering if you were prepared for the consequences?" That's exactly where Maya finds herself now. The police arrive swiftly, their presence turning the upscale restaurant into a crime scene. Officers question the staff, and it isn't long before the chef breaks down, admitting to being approached by a third party. The plot was simple: poison Jonathan's meal in exchange for a hefty sum. But who hired him? That remains a mystery. Maya watches the scene unfold, her heart pounding. She's just a street girl, used to being ignored or dismissed. Yet tonight, she's the key to unraveling a sinister plot. Jonathan stands beside her, his expression a mix of gratitude and determination. "You've got a sharp mind, Maya," he says, ruffling her hair gently. She smiles faintly, still processing the gravity of the situation. How often do people like Maya get a chance to make such a profound impact? The thought humbles Jonathan, who vows to ensure she isn't forgotten after this. The investigation leads to a shocking revelation. The mastermind behind the plot is someone Jonathan knows, an old business rival seeking revenge for a deal gone wrong. The rival had assumed Jonathan would trust the restaurant implicitly, never suspecting foul play. The betrayal cuts deep, but Jonathan is no stranger to the ruthlessness of the business world. What shocks him most is the role Maya played in preventing the worst. "If not for her," he tells the police, "I wouldn't be here right now." Maya listens quietly, a mix of pride and disbelief washing over her. What would you do if you suddenly found yourself thrust into the center of someone else's life-changing moment? For Maya, this night is nothing short of extraordinary. In the days that follow, Jonathan ensures Maya's bravery doesn't go unnoticed. Offers of help pour in for Maya: scholarships, housing, and mentorship opportunities. Jonathan, however, doesn't stop there. He personally takes Maya under his wing, determined to provide her with the future she deserves. For Maya, the sudden attention is overwhelming but heartening. For the first time in her life, she feels seen, not as a street girl, but as someone with value and potential. Have you ever been surprised by how much one selfless act can ripple outward, changing lives in ways you never expected? That's exactly what Maya is experiencing now. As Maya begins her new life, Jonathan reflects on how close he came to losing everything. The betrayal of his rival lingers, but it's overshadowed by his gratitude for Maya's courage. He implements stricter security measures and begins to value the small, unexpected moments in life, like a chance encounter with a girl on the street. Maya, now enrolled in school and thriving under Jonathan's mentorship, often visits his office to share her progress. Their bond grows stronger, built on mutual respect and the knowledge that they've forever changed each other's lives. Have you ever looked back at a seemingly random event and realized it was fate steering you in a new direction? For Jonathan and Maya, this couldn't be truer. The once frightening night becomes a story of redemption and second chances. Jonathan continues to build his empire, wiser and more cautious than before. Maya blossoms into a confident young woman, her intelligence and resilience shining through. Together, they've turned a moment of danger into a journey of transformation. Their story is proof that sometimes the most unexpected people can be our greatest allies. So next time a stranger warns you, would you stop to listen? Because as Jonathan learned, the smallest voices often hold the most powerful truths. And there you have it. A night that could have ended in tragedy turned into a story of courage, redemption, and second chances. Jonathan and Maya's paths crossed in the most unexpected way, and together they uncovered a shocking truth that forever changed their lives. Maya, the street girl no one noticed, became the hero Jonathan didn't know he needed. Their story is a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices hold the greatest wisdom. What would have happened if Jonathan hadn't listened to Maya that night? It's a chilling thought, but one thing's for sure. This chance encounter was no coincidence. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales that prove the power of courage and kindness. And remember, never underestimate the impact of a single act of bravery. You never know whose life you might change.